The first time my wife, Emily, mentioned the incidents with the teenagers, I brushed it off as something minor. She had just returned from running some errands and casually mentioned that a group of kids had been rude to her at the supermarket. I remember her describing them as rowdy college students who were goofing around in the aisles and laughing obnoxiously at everything. One of them, a tall boy with a baseball cap, had bumped into her and barely mumbled an apology before joining his friends in laughter. I chalked it up to typical adolescent behavior. Rudeness, yes, but nothing unusual. At the time, I didn't think much of it. I even chuckled a little, saying, "Kids these days have no respect." Emily had smiled, though I could see a hint of discomfort behind her eyes, but we moved on with our evening like it was nothing more than an annoyance in the day. If only I had known then that this was just the beginning of something that would escalate far beyond a few moments of teenage immaturity. A few days later, Emily returned from another errand run, looking visibly shaken. I could tell immediately that something was wrong. Her face was pale, and she was clutching her purse tightly, her hands trembling slightly. "What's wrong?" I asked, alarmed by her appearance. "Those kids, they're following me now," she said, her voice shaky. I was confused at first. "What do you mean, following you?" Emily sat down on the couch, taking a deep breath before explaining. "I saw the same group of teenagers again at the supermarket today. At first I thought it was just a coincidence, but then I noticed that they were watching me, whispering to each other and laughing. When I left the store, they followed me into the parking lot. One of them even called me." She hesitated, her eyes welling up with tears. "Called me a name." My heart sank. Emily was one of the kindest, most gentle people I knew. She had never been one for confrontation and always tried to see the best in people. The idea of her being harassed by a group of teenagers, made fun of and disrespected, filled me with anger. But I still didn't grasp the severity of it. I thought maybe it was just an isolated incident. Perhaps they were just being stupid kids and it would pass. "Did you get their license plate? Or do you know where they're from?" I asked, trying to find some practical way to resolve the situation. Emily shook her head. "No, they were on foot, just walking around the lot like they had all the time in the world. I didn't want to confront them. I just hurried to the car and drove off." My first instinct was to tell her that if it happened again, she should call the police. But Emily was adamant about not wanting to escalate things. "They're just kids, probably messing around. I don't want to make a big deal out of it," she insisted. Reluctantly, I agreed to let it go for now. But the nagging feeling in my gut wouldn't leave. I couldn't stand the thought of those kids harassing her and getting away with it. Days passed and Emily didn't mention the teenagers again. I hoped that maybe it had just been a one-time occurrence. But deep down, I had a sinking feeling that it wasn't over. And I was right. A couple of weeks later, the situation escalated in a way that neither of us had anticipated. Emily had been out for a walk near our neighborhood park when the group of teenagers showed up again. This time, they were more aggressive. According to Emily, they started shouting insults at her from across the street, mocking her appearance and making crude gestures. One of them even threw a crumpled soda can in her direction, though it missed her by a few feet. By the time she came home that day, she was visibly distraught. She barely made it through the front door before breaking down into tears. I wrapped my arms around her, trying to comfort her, but inside I was seething with rage. This had gone too far. It wasn't just harmless teenage mischief anymore. It was targeted bullying. "They just won't leave me alone," Emily sobbed into my chest. "What did I do to them? Why are they doing this?" I didn't have an answer for her. The helplessness I felt was overwhelming. I wanted to protect her, to shield her from the cruelty of those kids, but I didn't know how. Calling the police seemed like an option, but what would they really do? Could they even catch these kids based on a vague description? That night I lay awake, my mind racing with thoughts of what I could do. I couldn't just sit by and watch my wife be tormented like this. There had to be a way to stop it. And then an idea struck me. I work at a local college as part of the administrative staff. It's not a large school, but it's well known in our town, and I handle many of the student affairs. One of my duties includes processing student records, disciplinary actions, and even expulsion cases. It dawned on me that, given the age of these teenagers, there was a strong possibility that they were students at my college. The next morning, I brought up the idea to Emily. What if I could find out who they are? I asked cautiously. She looked at me puzzled. What do you mean? I'm saying if these kids are students at the college, I might be able to identify them and do something about it, I explained. We have strict codes of conduct, and if they're bullying you like this, it could be grounds for disciplinary action. Emily was hesitant. I don't know. It feels wrong. I don't want to be the reason someone gets expelled. I understood her reluctance. Emily was always compassionate, even when she was the one being wronged. But I couldn't let this go on. They had crossed a line, and I needed to do something to protect her. I know you don't want to cause trouble, I said gently, but this isn't just about you anymore. If they're treating you like this, there's no telling who else they're bullying. You'd be stopping them from hurting other people too. Emily didn't say anything for a while, but eventually she nodded, agreeing to let me pursue the matter. The next few days were spent combing through the student database, looking for any matches based on the vague descriptions Emily had given me. It wasn't easy, but after some careful digging and cross-referencing with security footage from the parking lot where the latest incident took place, I was able to narrow it down to a handful of students. It helped that one of them, the tall boy in the baseball cap, had a distinctive appearance that matched up with a student who had been flagged for minor infractions before. Once I had their names, I arranged a meeting with the dean of students. I presented the case, outlining the pattern of harassment and the impact it was having on Emily. To my surprise, the dean took the matter very seriously. She was just as concerned about the behavior of the students and assured me that they would investigate further. In the meantime, I felt a sense of relief knowing that action was being taken. But that relief was short-lived. A few days later, Emily came home from her usual walk looking more upset than I'd ever seen her. They followed me again, she said, her voice trembling with frustration and fear. They knew I was trying to do something about it. One of them shouted that they knew I was the wife of someone at the college and that if I kept causing trouble, they'd make my life even worse. The blood drained from my face. Somehow they had found out who I was and were now using it as leverage to intimidate Emily even further. This had escalated into something far more dangerous than I had anticipated. I immediately contacted the dean and informed her of the latest incident. She assured me that they were taking swift action. The next day, the students in question were called in for questioning. It didn't take long for them to crack under the pressure of an official investigation. They admitted to the bullying, though they tried to downplay it as harmless fun. The dean wasn't buying it. The students were each handed severe disciplinary actions, ranging from suspension to, in the case of the ringleader, full expulsion. I was satisfied that justice had been served, but Emily was still shaken. She worried about retaliation, even though the students were no longer attending the college. In the weeks that followed, things finally began to settle down. The harassment stopped, and Emily slowly regained her confidence. She started going out for her walks again, though she was always on alert, scanning her surroundings for any sign of the teenagers. I tried to reassure her that they were gone, that they wouldn't bother her anymore, but I knew the emotional toll had left a scar. As time passed, Emily grew more comfortable, and the fear began to fade. We never heard from the students again. They had been dealt with, and life returned to normal, at least on the surface. But the whole ordeal left a lasting impact on both of us. It was a reminder of how quickly things can spiral out of control, how fragile our sense of safety can be. Looking back, I sometimes wonder if there was another way I could have handled the situation. Maybe if I had intervened sooner, things wouldn't have gotten so bad. Maybe if I had been more aggressive from the start, the teenagers wouldn't have felt